It's already recording, love.
Awesome. Yeah, so Jonathan is going to be helping out on the chat. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation or want to be connected to any resources at all, he will be answering those in the chat. There will also,
Yo!
I'm going to mute everybody. Um, there will also be the opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation as well. So that said, bear with me while I share screen. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about scaling your real estate portfolio with house hacking. So this is simultaneously kind of an instructional course, but also a case study. This is a property that Jonathan and I own together. This is right near Old Town Arvada. If you all are familiar, it's 15 minutes walking to all the restaurants there. And this was a big project for us that has really been a tool that's helped us to scale our real estate portfolio. So I'm going to be talking through our strategy and how you can implement this within your own portfolio. So first off, you've clearly heard of Good Neighbor because you're watching this webinar. That said, we have a ton of resources. We're really here to be a tool for investors. I started out investing in 2021, actually, and it's really scaled quickly for me. It's been life changing. And my husband and I are actually going to be work optional starting this year. So it can make a big change in your life very quickly. That said, I'm here to help investors to scale their own portfolios and answer any questions. So we do events to help with this. We do the short-term rental course. It looks like we have somebody writing on the screen. If you could pause that, that would be great. Not sure if I can remove that, but we do the short-term rental course. We do investment underwriting. We do seller's guides, buyer's guides. We offer a podcast, AirDNA access, just a ton of resources. How can we remove this from the screen? Let's see.
I'm trying to figure that out. One second.
If you are the person drawing this, if you could not do that, that would be great.
Yeah. Also, whoever's drawing that, please, if you don't mind not doing that, and if this isn't for you,
Yo,
please,
bitch ass up.
hey, please, can you please get off the call?
I'm not sure how to remove this.
Liv, stop sharing your screen and then reshare.
All right.
That's up, Ron.
So
Shut
if
the
you
fuck
are
up,
the one
Ron.
doing that, please stop. If you're not interested in the call, then that is okay. But there are
I
people who
don't. I
want
was
to learn here.
interested until John's bitch ass started talking, bro. I was actually listening.
Okay, I have muted all participants. Okay. That said, I guess let's restart that. I
Yo, Mr.
apologize
Sam
for
said you
everybody
got a
else on the
small
call.
fucking dick.
Liv, you might just have to kick off Sam of the call.
Um, let's see. Okay, it's under Sam.
Yeah, it looks like he's no longer in the chat.
Okay. Well, that
Sorry
was
about that,
interesting. I have to
everyone.
say
That was
that's
a bit
a
strange.
that's a first for me. So that's an interesting one. All right. Well, that said, let's get back to it. Okay. So,
No.
okay. That I can't say has ever happened to me before. These. Okay, let's go back here. So there are a ton of resources for real estate investors. We have events, We have courses, investment underwriting. If you're curious if a deal is going to work, that's something that we can help you to figure out. Seller's guide, buyer's guide, podcast, AirDNA access. Oh my goodness. All right.
Looks like that's coming from Dom. So whoever, guys, please, we're just trying to have an event here. There's no need to have this stuff going on. There's people on the call who are interested in this topic. If you're not interested, please remove yourself or we will remove you from the call.
Yo, shut your bitch ass up, Jonathan. Stop trying to act like the fucking superhero.
Oh my goodness. Okay. He is, this is so unusual. My goodness. Okay, I guess let's give this one more try. I'm not sure how to stop him from coming in the call or why he is upset. I've never met this person before. All right, one more try. My goodness. Okay, back to it. So let's go over what you'll learn tonight. So you're going to be learning about strategies to turn your house hack. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, everybody. I actually have no idea how to stop this from happening.
Liv, if you go to participants and go into the meeting settings, you can block people from joining without you accepting them into the call.
Okay.
John, shut the fuck up.
So they're coming in under different names. And it says that they're gone from the call again.
Oh,
So,
John, I got a question.
okay. Yeah, I do think it's being hacked. Okay.
There's no way. You might have to. Did you find those settings, Liv?
Well, it says I can lock meeting.
Yeah, just lock the meeting and then
Okay. And
they
then,
won't be able to join without you accepting the request.
okay, great. All right. So I think hopefully we're set now. Okay. Well, let's start that again. I'm so sorry, everybody. That was very unexpected. So let me go back to this. Okay, I learned a new tool today, how to lock meetings. So what you'll learn today are strategies to turn your house hack into ongoing income, both while you're there and after you move out of the property. We'll also go over different options like Airbnb, room rentals, and medium-term rentals, as well as how to scale your house hack into a larger real estate portfolio. You can also use income from your house hack to offset mortgage costs for your portfolio. And these three pictures are three of our properties. Okay, so we're going to first talk over the case study for our particular house hack. So we were really prioritizing location and lower cost, as well as higher leverage. We wanted a great location next to Old Town because properties tend to do really well there. We wanted a lower cost property, which meant that we were okay with a value add element. And we wanted to use leverage. So as you can see, we only did a 5% down payment. So purchase price was 625, which meant we put down 31,250. We had about 1% closing costs. Typically in Colorado, I like to underwrite about 1.5%. So at 6,250 on this one. And we had a interest rate that, of course, was higher than what we were used to a couple of years ago, but the deal still works. So we went forward with it and we closed on it in July of 2023. So after we bought the property, as you can see, this is Jonathan and I together. we started the rehab process and we very bravely decided to do this as a DIY. And as a note here, it does not need to be a DIY if you're considering doing a deal like this. It was just our preference. We're fairly handy, so we decided to give it a try, but you can always, of course, hire this out. So here are some before and afters. We changed out a lot, but here are some of the bigger impact rooms. This is the bathroom downstairs, and then some of the rooms as well. There were children living here before, and so we just gave it more of an updated look. This was what the living room downstairs looked like when we started. It was a little scary looking, not terrible, but it definitely wasn't the most attractive space in the world either. So this really did get us into a good location for a good price, picking up a house that had some value add opportunity. And now this is what it looks like in the downstairs in the same room. So we built in a kitchenette because our plan was to separate the house into multiple units. So these, believe it or not, are the same like kitchen area. We just redid these. We added a fridge. We added some more cabinets, as well as just an IKEA island here too, to give the space a nicer feel. And we updated the upstairs bathroom as well. So we put in a good amount of work on this property. So all in, here's what we spent on flooring, paint, trim, and supplies, electrical, so on and so on. For the downstairs unit, we put in $15,750. We first finished off the downstairs unit because we wanted to start making income off of the downstairs as a rental. We later went on to finish the upstairs unit, which we put around $9,000 into for a grand total of $23,975. So here were our financial results as we started to rent out the basement. So we listed it at the end of November, just the last few days. And then we had several times throughout here where we had friends or family visiting where we let them use the downstairs unit. So some of these numbers are a little lower than if we had been doing it full time. And in October, it was partial. It was just a few days at the beginning. So all in, we made $27,921 gross. We had about $3,100 in cleaning expenses. And that meant that our net was $24,821. So let's talk about the results of this process for us financially. So as I had mentioned, our net house hack income just from the downstairs after cleaning expenses was $24,821. The rehab cost was $23,975. And so we actually came out positive from the house hack income and the rehab costs, which was our goal going into it. We really wanted our house hack income to fund the rehab as a tool to grow our portfolio. We also experienced appreciation on the property as well. We haven't had it reappraised. We will in the near future because we're going to do a refinance. But right now there are comps that are similar that are selling for about $680 to $725 in the area. So we were able to add about $55,000 of value from appreciation all the way up to around $100,000 of value. So between the two of these, we are already starting to see a really strong financial result from this strategy. On top of that, we have ongoing cash flow. So when I made this presentation, it was late December. And so these numbers are somewhat outdated, but as we were in late December, we had already had over $17,000 in bookings on the property for having it up in November and December. We're expecting to make about $105,000 gross on the property over the year, which means that our net, after you take out all expenses, maintenance, utilities, cleaning expenses, all of that, we're expecting to net about $2,712 per month on it, or $32,545 per year. So one other point that I want to make here as well is that we actually have another strategy we're thinking of on the property that's adjacent to house hacking, which is we have this large detached garage. We actually recently got it quoted for the cost to turn it into an ADU. So they quoted us about $100,000 to turn that garage into a 1-bed ADU living space. So it's just Jonathan and I, and we're actually considering doing the project and living out of the ADU ourselves, which means that we could live entirely for free and be completely supported by our portfolio. So it's really exciting, the freedom and opportunity that house hacking, especially when you start looking into ADUs, can build.
Hey, Liv,
So yes.
one question. So there was a clarification question that came from Christine for
Mm-hmm.
the previous slide. So the
Oh,
question
sure.
was, are those numbers from renting both the downstairs and upstairs?
Oh, great question. So when we were just renting out the downstairs, that's where this column on the left, rental income, is coming in. So that was from renting out the downstairs. The $17,000 was once we opened up the whole property. We opened up the bottom unit and the top unit to do a full short-term rental as an exit strategy from this. That's where we got the $17,000 in bookings. That's a great clarification question. Okay. So house hacking is a really great tool, of course, but I think where people don't necessarily think through it is when you enter a house hack, and then it's really helpful to think about what your exit strategy is going to be. So in our case, as just mentioned, we opened up the 2 units because we wanted to be able to rent out the entire property as a short-term rental. So on average, 2-bed properties are earning, typically, if you're doing a house hack, they're typically doing between $30,000 to $40,000 per year. When you bump that up to a 4-bed property, a lot of the times you're able to do closer to 100,000, and it goes up from there if you have more rooms. So for us, our exit strategy was really, how do we hold this as a house hack and supplement the cost to renovate the space with an exit strategy of turning the entire rental into a short-term rental for the whole space. So that was a really attractive hold strategy for us, which is why we've gone forward with that. And then I'll talk through the sell strategy too, which is also attractive. So when you choose to hold an investment like this, the benefits you get, of course, are cash flow, as you saw on the last slide, appreciation too. As you can see, we did have some forced appreciation here, and it's going to continue to appreciate over time, of course, as we hold it. The next is amortization. So you have people who are renting out the property who are paying down your debt for you. I think of this almost as an automatic investment into our net worth. This is money that's going towards your net worth that you don't really have to see or think about. And it's a really powerful tool that shouldn't be played down. The other option with a hold is that you can actually get a HELOC or a refinance to pull out equity, especially in a situation like this where you have forced appreciation. You can use that equity for other projects. So, for example, for us, we have another property where we've owned it for a couple of years and we've had natural appreciation on it. We put a HELOC on that property, which is what we're using to fund other renovation projects right now as well. So it's a really powerful tool to have. The other option when you're thinking of an exit strategy for a house hack, of course, is selling. And I think that this one is sometimes underplayed because everybody likes the idea of being a buy and hold investor. But when you house hack in particular, the sell strategy is pretty compelling because when you sell a primary residence that you've lived in for 2 of the last 5 years, you actually can avoid taxation on the first $250,000 of it if you're single, or $500,000 of appreciation if you're in a married couple. So this is a really powerful tool. So in a case like ours, say that we choose to sell a couple of years down the road, since we lived in the property, we're able to do this as a tax strategy where we can trade up or reinvest in a way that we're not paying a large amount of capital gains on it. So when you add value add or flipping to a strategy like this, it becomes extremely powerful. So let's go a bit more into the hold strategy. Of course, there are different elements if you choose to hold your X house hack. The first one that you all already, I'm sure, know I like the most is doing a short-term rental. The numbers are just better for a short-term rental, which is why, as an investor, it's a strategy that we continue to go back to. And that said, it's really helpful when you're thinking about where to get a house hack to consider if it's an area where you can actually short-term rent the entire property at the end of your house hacking experience. It's a great exit strategy to have access to. The second is medium-term rentals. So this is one that we've also used here and there. In general, you can expect the gross income that you'll receive on a medium-term rental to be about a time and a half what you would get on a long-term rental. So of course, there's less predictability, of course, when you're doing these 3-month-ish stays as there is if you had a long-term rental in place, but sometimes it can be worth it to increase your revenue. Last is rent by the room. It's one that I haven't done myself because I view it as higher risk. If you're renting out rooms to different people who don't know each other, it seems like you could have a high likelihood for turnover. So it's one that I've shied away from, but that you can get better numbers on your property for relative to a long-term rental. So to go back to the hold strategy for short-term rentals, if you do choose to exit your house hack into a short-term rental for the full property, you'll want to make sure that you're in a short-term rental friendly area of Denver. So you can look in Arvada. The rule in Arvada is that you can have up to 3 short-term rental properties per investor. So if it's you and a partner, you can have up to 6. Westminster, the rule is technically that you can have 1 investment property that's a short-term rental per person. That said, we have found that there are some loopholes around registering with an LLC. So another place to look that a lot of people are not familiar with is unincorporated Adams County. So this area actually does have a Denver address, but because it's an unincorporated area, you can do short-term rentals there. That said, there aren't regulations in place, which to some degree does carry more risk. That said, the area, we continue to check in with the zoning office, and they continue to say that they have no intent to implement any sort of regulations against short-term rental investors in the area. So it's something that we feel fairly confident on, that this is an ongoing sustainable business. Another one is Wheat Ridge. I like to mention this one because Wheat Ridge has a capped permit system, and there's actually just one. They subdivided into different districts. There's actually just one district left that has a couple of permits. This, of course, is interesting because if you can get one of those permits, your competition is capped. And because of that, the numbers are really good in Wheat Ridge. I will say the purchase prices can be up a little bit from Arvada, Westminster, and Adams County, where depending on the size of your property, you're often going to be getting in between 600 and 800. If you're doing value add, you can go a little bit below that as well. Wheat Ridge, the prices are a little bit higher than that, but still doable. And there are builds in all of these areas that work really well for house hacks that can later be opened up. Outside of that, there's also Centennial to check out. Centennial does cap the number of people who can be staying at a short-term rental property at one time to 8, which does cap your revenue to some degree, but there's just not a lot of competition in the area. So there is space to move in and have a really profitable business there. And if you're open to mountain communities, there are a lot of other options as well. I'm just focusing on the metro since most people tend to live and work near the metro. So for a house hack strategy, I'm mainly focusing on this. If you want any resources around where is short-term rental friendly in mountain communities, please make sure to shoot me an email. It should be in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions there. So there is one house hack that's on the market right now that I thought I would bring up. This one has been actually off market. I think it's going on MLS soon. So of course, if you're interested, feel free to reach out. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath. This is over near City Park in Denver. It's listed for $760, comes for fully furnished, and the downstairs has been making $36,000 per year. So while this one is more limited in terms of exit strategies, you could always do something like a long-term rental in the top and a short-term rental in the bottom, or different strategies like that to continue your operations. at the end of moving out of your house hack eventually as you grow your portfolio. So that said, there are several ways that myself and Good Neighbor as a whole can help you as you plan out your portfolio and think about what strategies you can be using to grow it over time. So we will help you to understand rental strategy, legislation restrictions, location, property type. I personally do underwriting and cash flow analysis on every property that my clients are seriously considering. This is really helpful. I'm an extremely honest underwriter because I'm an investor first. So if it's a bad deal, I will absolutely tell my clients so they know, because sometimes it's harder to recognize. And I want to make sure that my clients are profitable on an ongoing basis and want to come back and reinvest. I will, of course, help with touring properties, the whole contract to close process, inspections, appraisals. But more importantly, honestly, than those pieces are, I'm happy to connect you with different resources that might be helpful. We're in the process of doing construction on one of our houses. We're adding a couple of bedrooms and a bathroom. So I have a great contractor team that I can point you to, a designer to help you. If you don't have an eye for design, then that's completely fine if you want to do a short-term rental, but just know your limits and know that there are resources for other people who can help you to make sure you have a design forward property that's going to be really effective. Can always point you to who's best for that. We'll help you to automate your listing so that you're not putting in more than an hour per week per property. And then just overall teach you how to manage a successful business. Because when you're doing short-term rentals, even medium-term rentals, it's a lot more than just getting the keys to a property. It's about your ability to learn to run a profitable business. And when you have people and resources for how to do this effectively, it becomes really simple to do. So if you're thinking about investing in short-term rentals, but you aren't necessarily ready to start conversations yet, I highly encourage you to check out the course that we have. It's like 15 hours of content on how to put together a short-term rental with everything from the purchase process all the way through how to run it effectively. So if you use the code LIVE, you can get a 50% discount on it. So pretty substantial. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, I love to have conversations with different investors, whether you're 9 days from wanting to buy something or 90 days, or if you're not even sure about it. I'm happy to just bounce ideas off with you and walk through different things that might be effective. So you can always schedule with me. I have a link in there to grab a coffee or to do a phone call, just whatever is most convenient. Check out my Instagram too. I post a lot of content on short-term rentals and some other stuff as well. So yeah, that said, I'm happy to take any questions. Give me a moment as I stop sharing. And again, thank you all so much for your patience at the beginning here. That was something else. So
That was definitely a roller coaster to say the least. But I'm glad
yeah,
we mitigated that. There was a couple questions that I've been answering here in the chat. And one really great question that came up from Angela was the limitations on occupancy that Arvada has. So I
yeah.
did share that's capped at 65%. And so she also wanted to know around, like, how do you not exceed that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that a lot of investors are really thinking about when they're looking at Arvada. It's something that we definitely considered that I honestly thought was going to be more prohibitive than it has been. So yeah, so for the 65% rule, we tend to stick to it pretty closely. That said, the city often isn't checking in all the time on it. The way that we've been able to move our occupancy above that legally is by typically we'll get in a medium term rental like once per year. The way that we encourage that is through our pricing strategy. Jonathan is amazing at running our pricing strategy, and he does it for a couple of people as well. So what he does with pricing is he'll set discounts for a monthly stay. so that if someone wants to stay for 30 days or more, they get a really steep discount compared to these shorter stays. And that has encouraged people to do a medium term rental once or twice per year. That way our occupancy can stay higher throughout. But I'd say overall, we track lead time, occupancy percent, and we are really making sure that we're tracking to 65%. If our occupancy starts to look a little bit high relative to what we're expecting for the specific seasonality, then we do make pricing adjustments by increasing or decreasing the pricing so that we can stay closer to our 65% outside of the medium term rentals while making sure that we're maximizing our revenue. So that's a great question. It really hasn't been a big deal for us, though. We've been able to have great profitability with that limitation. Any other questions? I'm just browsing through the chat here.
Yes, yeah, I saw Angela's response as well. So yeah, having a good mix of medium-term rentals in like the slower months like January and February is generally what we tend to go after, just because in general for Arvada, at least in that market, that's the slower seasons. And we just find that that's when people are wanting to come out to Colorado either to work remotely and come out and ski and hang out with friends. So it's kind of a win-win situation there for us and the people booking.
Mm-hmm. I saw somebody ask if this slide deck would be shared, and yes, I will be sending it out. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, is this our primary residence? So when we purchased it, it was as a primary residence. That's how we were able to do such a low down payment. We've since moved out. We honestly may make it our primary residence again because that ADU strategy is so compelling. Because once we build that in, and we're lucky with ADUs in Arvada. I have actually just did another presentation on ADUs. So if you were there, I think you should have the slide deck. If you don't, then just shoot me an email. I'm happy to share that one as well. But with ADUs in Arvada, it's easier from a permitting perspective. And so it should be a pretty straightforward process for us to put that in. And we will be entirely work optional at that point. So that's pretty powerful too. So that said, I think it will end up being our primary residence again in the future after a construction project as well.
We did have two more new questions, one from Abraham. So he mentioned, what would you recommend for someone new with a W-2 job to start house hacking?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you're set up well with a W-2 job. When we started buying, we both had W-2 jobs. I have an MBA in finance. I used to work in the corporate investment bank at Wells Fargo. It makes it really easy when you have that W-2. So you can just talk with me. I'm happy to connect you with a great lender. You can do as low as 5% down. If you go FHA, you can do as low as 3.5% down. And there's also a lot of resources for down payment assistance, including if you have a pretty sizable salary, which a lot of people don't know. So I'm happy to send you some resources on that. Then it's all about finding the right build of house that's workable for the strategy. There's a lot of different properties that'll have these walkout basement spaces. There's a lot in Westminster, Wheat Ridge, Arvada, all throughout that area, in Centennial as well. You can do it. So there's a lot of options to consider, especially when you're creative as you're looking with different houses about where you can block it off. But yeah, make sure to send me an email or schedule a Calendly and I can send you some options and go over that in more detail.
Awesome. There was another question too around regulations for Westminster and Adams County. And
Yeah.
what are those regulations?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Westminster, Westminster's cool. So they were not regulated until I believe it was like early 24, late 23, around there. And so there were a lot of Airbnbs operating there before it was regulated. They've since added regulations. So it's one property per investor that is not a primary residence. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door and have a nice exit strategy. So that's a great place to start. The other is unincorporated Adams County, like you mentioned. That area, the numbers are really strong. And especially if you're looking at lower purchase prices, you can get in, even high 500s, which of course in Denver, we have high prices. And so it's a pretty affordable entry point. It's unregulated, but it is short-term rental friendly. So you don't have any of the same occupancy limitations like you have in Arvada. And there's not quite as strong of competition either. So both are great options to look at. I particularly like unincorporated Adams because you get a little bit closer proximity to the city and it's nice to bring in Denver traffic. Let's see. Looking for other questions.
Was a follow-up from Angela. So she said non-primary residence, so not house hacking.
Yeah, so I'll clarify on that. So it started out as a primary residence where we were house hacking. And then as an exit strategy, we moved out. We moved out and turned it into a full house. So it's no longer a primary residence, but it was purchased as a primary residence, and we lived there for over a year. Oh, sorry, for the regulations in Westminster. Yeah, so in Westminster, you can do it as a primary residence, or you can do it as a pure play investment property. So you can buy as a primary residence, move out, and then use it as an investment property without living there without any issues in Westminster. The regulations are friendly for that. Any other questions? Yes, you can house hack in Westminster too.
I'm curious to get people's thoughts. So do you guys currently own any properties, or are you looking to potentially acquire through house hacking? I feel like it's a really good way to get into the market. We've done it several times.
Yeah, and just to kind of go into some detail on our story there. So we bought a first property as a primary residence. We did, 5% down. We got a roommate. Then so house hacking, but in more of a shared space. Then we bought our second house also as a primary residence. We also brought in a roommate there. Then our third one, we actually made it a house hack, as you saw in the presentation, where we actually separated off the space so that we could short-term rent it, which of course made our income numbers a lot better than having a roommate. So we've really leaned hard into the house hacking strategy, and it's allowed us to get our portfolio up to above $2 million with a really small amount down. I mean, it's just an awesome tool for scaling. And every time we've had a house hack, we've been able to reapply our income there into the next property. So it's just been life changing as a strategy for us. So, and Angela, yes, it is hard, but talk with me because there are some options that are more affordable, and also resources that can help it to be more affordable even at high interest rates. So for example, I have a client that's actually closing in a week or two, where we were able to negotiate in an interest rate buy down. So the sellers are actually paying down their interest rate by 2% in the first year. So they have, an interest rate in the low fives going in. So there are strategies like that that you can work on with sellers. Also, if you're looking for lower cost, I'd definitely check out Adams County. If you mix in a rate buy down, down payment assistance programs, and house hacking, it makes it so much more approachable. But I feel your pain. It can be intimidating, but you can do it definitely. Yep. Concessions are the way to go. Yeah, Angela, shoot me an email, or let's schedule a meeting and we can walk through strategies with that, because it's so important to me as a young investor that people realize how much more approachable this is than it can immediately feel. And Abraham, yes, house hacking is such an ideal way to start building a real estate portfolio. And the burr strategy is interesting. I went through a phase where I was so excited about the burr strategy, but man, it's really hard to find spots where the numbers work for burrs. Especially if it's a little bit easier actually if you're doing a short-term rental at the end instead of a long-term rental, which is of course what traditionally people are doing for burrs. So we kind of call it burr B&B too. The numbers just shake out better. And then of course it's really hard to be able to pull out your full equity. So there are deals that you can get close to it, but burrs can be really tough, especially in competitive markets. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I think I've answered all the questions so far. Any other questions? Happy to speak to pretty much anything. I mean, I never would have thought that we would have a multi-million-dollar portfolio in our 20s. It's just an awesome tool to have in your belt. I guess one other point here too. The hardest point I will say is getting into the market, because like I mentioned in the presentation, when you're first buying, like for Jonathan and I, we were early 20s, we each brought like $16,000 because we shared this first deal together. And that felt like a lot of money as we were first entering the market. Since then, our homes have appreciated. We've had access to more capital by HELOCs. We've had debt pay down. And so now it's crazy how it just escalates, because once you start getting some equity in your property, you can tap into that equity to help expand your portfolio. And then you also have cash flow to lean on from your portfolio as you grow. So really the first step is the hardest. There's no denying that. So house hacking really helps to make that feel a bit easier. But once you have your foot in the door, doesn't have to be your dream house, but when you have your foot in the door, it really, really can help you to scale in the future. Yep. Definitely the hardest. Yeah, it felt so much more scary the first time doing it. Yeah, and now it's a really comfortable process. So it's about getting to that first one and then just being able to scale.
A good analogy is like working out. You just gotta consistently exercise that muscle and it'll just feel more natural over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another one that I've heard that, really resonates with me is that when you're building strength, that's when you feel the weakest. And when you're building wealth, that's when you feel the poorest. So it can be scary having these big cash outlays as you're getting started. Not that they need to be big, because I mean, there really are a lot of assistance programs for buyers as well. But it still is intimidating. But you know that if you're feeling like you're putting more into it, that's a time that you're likely building wealth. And that's certainly the case in real estate. Okay. So unless you have any last minute questions, I appreciate you all for coming on and for staying through that part at the beginning. Your patience is appreciated. And now I know how to turn that off. So I'll know for the next webinar. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Yeah, feel free to reach out with any more questions, or if you want to bounce ideas off of me one-on-one. I'm easy to reach. I'm happy to chat on whatever stage you're in. I work with people who are buying their first house for $300,000, and I work with investors who are buying, $2.5 million mountain houses. I do it all. And I'm happy to help with investors at any point in the process. So that said, I hope everybody has a great Friday and a great weekend. Thanks.